What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Jason Paige here again without any bells and whistles, without any singing, without any performing, just me and you in an intimate, uh, deep dive into my brain, my life, my thoughts. And today is very challenging because we're going to be talking about food. We talked about fasting before, and now I'm going to try to give you my perspective on food outside of fasting. Obviously, you can't fast for the rest of your life. You got to eat. And in our society, the food choices are absolutely endless. And what we're supposed to eat to make ourselves the very best. Sorry, I'm not really singing here, but to make ourselves the very best of our unique individuals like no one ever was, like ourselves. The choices we make of what we put in our body are incredibly important, and I have arrived at various different landmark points in my life where I changed my diet to figure out what is the best for me. And honestly, I'm still not at a place where I know what the optimum food is. So um, it's based on how you feel. I made a big change in 2012 when I felt like I was going to pass out. Basically, I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I thought, oh no, this I've got to improve my eating habits. I started drinking what was just coming out, cold pressed juices, because I thought, let's chase the highest nutrient dense foods I can get in my body, and I started drinking these cold pressed juices that were coming out. Um, and there was stores like Robex popping up that would make you these juices. And of course, this is like 10 to 15 years ago. Um, and at one point, I continued to eat everything else, but adding the nutrient density to my diet. And it's hard to measure. I mean, I didn't feel like I was going to pass out anymore, but it's hard to measure where you are in your how you feel because you're changing. Now that's 15 years ago. Do I feel better than I felt 15 years ago? At times I definitely do. And my diet certainly has a lot to do with that, but what specifically it is, how to really figure out what it is for you specifically is a very hard thing to do. So I encourage you to use yourself and really try to get in touch with how a food makes you feel. Um, like within a few hours after you eat it. It's hard to see like how you feel after months of eating something because you can't remember how you felt before, or it's kind of hard unless you document how you felt, unless you write it down and video yourself of how you feel. Um, you can't really gauge the past when you're in the present, and so many things are changing. But that being said, I just had some pizza a couple days ago, and and pasta, and within like 4 hours, I felt so tired, and there was no reason for me to feel tired. So I can gauge that effect on my body, or that particular pizza on my body. Now I might have eaten some other pizza and it would have been better. This was actually pizza on sourdough bread, which I have learned is probably the best kind of bread that you can eat, um, from a store called Erewhon, which is the highest nutrient dense foods line their aisles for the most money that anybody has ever charged for foods. They have a yogurt that's this big that's $11. It's unbelievable what they have there. So I am conducting this experiment with myself by getting in touch with what I feel and seeing how foods affect that feeling. Of course, there's lots of other factors. There's sunlight, there's sleep, there's these crazy fabrics that we're wearing. There's our life, our loves, and our psychological state that also determines how we feel. But if you can kind of just get a general feeling of how a food makes you feel, kind of like coffee. You drink coffee and you kind of do feel a little bit of a buzz. Then you can gauge, and then you feel a crash after that. You can gauge how the foods are affecting your overall general health. So, in pursuing this, my process went from drinking these foods that were high density juices and vegetables to looking for those same things in the organic state instead of the difference between organic and regular is kind of debated, but basically they use organic pesticides instead of inorganic pesticides. And some of those are harmful as well, but generally speaking, the practice of organic farming is better. So the food tastes better to me. So I generally think that the organic choice is better than the non-organic choices because of the chemicals, the pesticides, and to whatever degree that we can trust the overarching agency to protect us by giving them the organic label because they did certain things that that agency believes is better. And of course, this changes based on the product. Organic eggs have a different standard to meet than organic potato chips or organic, rice or organic pasta. Like each one has its own list of things that they have to satisfy in order to become an organic product. So delving into that is a very complicated process as well. But generally speaking, I'm hoping that organic is better than non-organic. So I made myself go from the cold press to the organic cold press. I was on a tour in Europe, and my buddy challenged me to a push-up contest when we got back, and just to get us in shape. And I kind of chickened out on the push-ups. I did them for a few days, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do instead? I'm going to commit myself to a completely vegan diet and see how I feel and see if I can get in shape, I can lose weight, and I can improve my health. Basically, I am using myself as the science experiment because I am a unique being and I have my own parameters and my own reality that I can't do what this guy does or what that girl does because I'm me and subject to a whole different set of parameters. So I engaged in the vegan diet and I accelerated it by making it vegan organic, and then I accelerated again by making it vegan raw for a moment there, and then I did experiments with no salt and no sugar to try to cut out salts and sugars from the diet. And then the main thing that I learned from this whole process is just to cut out all processed foods. Some point during the vegan journey, I was eating vegan processed foods, which were making me not feel good, and it didn't really overall improve my diet. During this time period, I lost, and this is about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I stayed with this vigilantly for about 4 years, and in that time period, I lost a severe amount of what I believe is testosterone because I lost my sex drive in a way that I have never had in my life. I've always had a very strong sex drive, and Instagram hoes have always attracted me in some way. And during this period, I did not scroll through the Instagram hoes and be like, whoa, check her out. That was not even part of my paradigm. Now, I got a lot of work done because I wasn't distracted by sexual thoughts, which are another potential psychological component in our lives. Why not just for procreation, but that'll be another episode, sexuality. But anyway, in this time period, I lost the drive, and I was pretty much celibate for about a year to a year and a half. And at the end of that period, I was eating with it was very difficult to maintain these diets when you're traveling because restaurants are extremely difficult to find out if they're using the proper ingredients, if they're organic. During this period of veganism, I also discovered seed oils and the dangers of eating oils that are rancid seed oils that come from a process of making of using hexane to extract the seeds, and there's so many bad things in so many foods. Even so I'm at the end of the vegan journey trying to eat in restaurants, and my buddy says, you know what, you don't know what you're going to get in that broccoli, what kind of broccoli it is. You don't know what they're frying it, what they're cooking it in, what kind of oils they're cooking it in. You don't know what kind of pesticides they use. Probably the most healthy thing you can get in this restaurant is that grass-fed steak. And he made the case for it because the animal eats the right things. It has all the nutrient density in the steak. I was super hungry, and I started eating small pieces of this very high, very expensive steak just to participate in eating at the restaurant instead of not eating because I couldn't find anything that was good that met my standards. This, on a nutritional level, met my standards because one of the reasons why I didn't want to eat meat is because of how it's processed and how difficult it is to get meat that is not healthy for you. Because of the grains and the GMO feeds and the way that they treat the animals and all the bad things that make animal products so bad for you. And I believe that there's a copious amount of studies out there that will show that. But there's also studies that will show that animals that are wild caught, that are eating what they're supposed to eat in nature, transfer the nutrients to the humans in a different way than the farmed and processed animals, much like the same way that the wild crafted vegetables and fruits that are in the wild as they're supposed to be have a different nutrient density. They have a different profile that has more to it than your farmed fruits and vegetables that have been so completely distorted from their original state that they don't resemble even their original. Tomato is not a tomato anymore. An apple is not an apple. An orange isn't an orange. All of these things have been just in the farming world just so crossbred to be the biggest, fullest, and most efficient fruit that they can make with the brightest colors. And they're not really thinking about what the components of the nutrients are. So I moved in slowly into these grass-fed, grass-finished meat products that were what I believe to be the highest nutrient density I can find. And what happened to me in terms of how I felt, I got my testosterone back. I had more drive. I had more of a reaction to Instagram scrolling, that's for sure. And I actually was inspired to be in the wonderful relationship that I'm in now. And I attribute much of it to this production of desire through the production of testosterone and the production of a sex drive. At my age, it could be definitely diminishing naturally, but there's no reason that it has to diminish at this age. It can continue into the later years of life. So I have since that time tried to invest myself a little bit more in the high nutrient grass-fed, grass-finished meat products, and started to understand a little bit more about how people ate based on the research of a guy named Weston Price, who was a dentist who went around and was looking at different communities that were isolated and what their food sources were and how they did within each food source and how they did with their health outcomes based on the foods that they ate. And the healthiest, longest lives were found in communities that ate mostly animal products and some vegetables, high fat contents, and animals that were eating the right thing, not animals that were eating, crazy GMO ingredients. One very interesting thing he found is that once wheat was introduced to these communities, diseases were introduced to these communities, that their bodies were not really responding well to it, or at least that's what he concluded, that the communities with the wheat were the ones with the most dental problems, the ones with the most diseases, and the worst health outcomes. So we're on this quest to figure out what it is we're supposed to eat. And I think, there's some rules that I try to follow now as much as I can. What's the most natural thing I can eat, and that will have the most nutrient density, that will be the least processed, and that will, make me feel a certain way, that will make me feel virile, that will give me energy, that will sustain me. And right now, that is a mostly animal-based diet. Now that could change, but I'm getting more and more confirmation from different sources that that is, if you maintain it and you stay away from the processed foods, and it's very hard to, I mean, even the grass-fed, grass-finished cows that I purchase meat from that are not even vaccinated. They are completely free of any interventions, except for, they move them around on the land so that they can eat what they would naturally eat. Now, it's also a little bit of a debate as to those animals, those cows that they're actually moving around, are hundreds of years of cows being interbred to become those cows when originally they would be bison. So I think bison out in the wild would probably be the highest nutrient density and the most natural thing you can find. And sometimes they actually offer that, wild bison. But these cows, this farm I use called Polyface Farms has unvaccinated, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and they also have other products like A2 cheeses and different things that are made from those cows. So I try to stay at that highest nutrient density, and then I try to eat the organic fruits if I can, even though the fruits are, like I said, they're not really what their original state was. And ultimately, I think, I keep learning more about all these different modes, and they're different people presenting completely contradicting evidence, and they are all very supported by, history and their education. So I think there are many different ways, and you have to find your way that makes you feel the way that you need to feel, the way that that you should feel. And I tried one way, and I'm still trying this mostly animal diet to see if it makes me feel the way I want to feel at this age that I'm at, with all the parameters in my life having to be factored in as well. So my mom is also extremely influential in this process, because that's what she's doing. She continues to hone and to remove unnecessary ingredients and unnecessary processing from her food, so that she can see what it is that makes her feel each way, and use herself as a science experiment to see what she did to create how she feels, or whatever is going on. At least what she did with food. Now, the rest of the environment, between the EMFs and sunlight and grounding and fabrics and cleaning products and air that we breathe, those things we have to try to control on some level as well, and that's a very difficult thing to do, because we're being bombarded by many different factors that can contribute to our overall health at all times. But in the food realm, you can experiment with yourself. Recently, there was just a little bit more on this tangent, that there was some videos popping up of you can eat sugar and lose weight. There are people just eating Twinkies and losing weight. And, it can't be very healthy for you, but they're actually starting to say there are positive outcomes from eating Twinkies. And it's just like, it's very hard to weed through all the various perspectives. And you have to find what works for you. And if that dude finds that he eats Twinkies and he thrives and he's ripped and he's got all the energy and the testosterone and he's doing good and his perspective is good, his health, and he's living his best life, then go for it. Eat those Twinkies. I logically think that probably doesn't work, but maybe mentally, because he's believing in it so much, those mental factors overwhelm any of the bad stuff that the Twinkies may be causing in his body. But I think for me, at this point in my life, my general state, my general perspective is to eat the most natural high density foods that human beings would be eating in the wild, or eat the foods that are eating the right foods. So the cows eat the right foods, eat the cows that eat the right foods. Eat the plants that get the right nutrients, that are wild, that are what they're supposed to be. Drink the water that is what it's supposed to be, not manipulated and combined with all kinds of chemicals and packed in plastic and shipped to you through pipes that have all kinds of problems as well. As I said in the water video, I collect my own water. So high density, no processed foods, most natural to the earth before man got to it as we can get. And that, I hope, with all of the meditation, the water, and then some fasting to just, take a break from this food challenge, will help you live your best life and be the healthiest that you can be in the way that you find out that you need to be the very best, like no one ever was. Jason Paige, signing off.